Hey, dear listener, welcome to The Deliberate Scribe, where we help writers be deliberate and redemptive in their writing, thinking, and living. And we help you to finish your book. We particularly focus on Christian writers, but if you are not of the faith, then certainly we are most willing to help you too. Hey, it has been a very long time since I last uploaded a podcast. And it is because I've been so extremely busy with all kinds of editing projects and coaching projects and such that I, during my office times, just had no time whatsoever to record anything. So I apologize for letting you wait for such a long time. I'm sitting now at home. The kids are in bed, so I can now sit here with my Shure SM58 microphone just on a chair in the dining room recording my podcast. So this is a bit different, and probably I'm gonna do it this way from now on, at least for a while, for as long as I'm gonna be so busy. But I heard that my customers love these podcasts, so I'm going to go out of my way to try and continue making them even though I'm so busy. So, bear with me. If it happens that children will come ask for a cup of water, I might get a bit distracted here and there. Okay, so the subject of today is active scenes or immediate scenes and how to use those in nonfiction. But first, I want to invite you to subscribe to my newsletter. I give free tips in my emails, the best tips that I have to help you start, write, self-edit, and finish your books. And it comes with a free coaching call with me, 1 hour for you, no strings attached, and a free writing course from theme and outline to final manuscript. So go to my website, yourbeststory.net, yourbeststory.net, and on the homepage, scroll down a tiny bit and you'll find the subscription form. Write down your name, give your email address, and my emails will begin to trickle in. Okay, now, active scenes or immediate scenes. Nothing livens up your prose as much as active scenes. We know them mostly from fiction. This is the stuff that you can see. When you're watching a movie, you're watching scene after scene after scene. That is what makes up a movie. And it is what makes up a fiction book as well. But you also find it a lot in narrative nonfiction or in nonfiction with narrative elements. So what is narrative actually? Narrative is story. Not just conveying dry information, but information conveyed by means of something that is more engaging, namely the experiences of a person told in a story. Usually it comprises roughly two modes. You have a narrative summary. And that means that time is going faster. There are sometimes huge time gaps that is being skipped over. And it summarizes elements. Then there is the active scene, things that take place in real time. It's like you put a camera on it that records smell, thoughts, sensations, sounds, emotions, etc. A super camera. You put it on to the people doing something and it records everything. You're in the middle of the action and let the camera run and the scene plays through time. And I would like actually to add a third one to this. Interior monologue. The reason why I add this not as one of the modes is that it can be part of narrative summary or active scene. The thing is, interior monologue are the thoughts that are going on in the character's head. So why can that be both? Why can that be both narrative summary and active scene? Well, because there can be a summary of events going on in the character's head. It can be that the character is thinking in a summarizing way, and it will then read as narrative summary rather than an active scene. And this way you can also make narrative summary more interesting, to write it as though it is interior monologue, to give this narrative summary information through the actual thinking of the character. Well, in nonfiction, it's of course a bit difficult because it's difficult to know what persons were thinking, but still you can write it in such a way that it feels more that way. And of course, through interviews, you can get to know a whole lot. But at the same time, interior monologue is always active scene, because you are always in real time following the thoughts of the main character, the viewpoint character. So that's why interior monologue sort of falls in both of these categories, in narrative summary and in active scene. These two modes, narrative summary and active scene, you can also express that in the ladder of abstraction. And actually it is more like a spectrum. On the higher rungs of the ladder of abstraction, you have the narrative summary, where everything is abstract, where everything is, all the details disappear and you begin to see the bigger picture. And the lower rungs on the ladder of abstraction are the active scenes, where you are like a fly on the wall. You can also, this is also where you hear the interior monologue, and you see exactly all the little details of the action that's going on. You are really a fly on the wall looking at what is going on. And in the middle, you can sort of climb that ladder of abstraction, go up and down along that ladder of abstraction while you are writing. So you flip into narrative summary and then into active scene, and it can merge very fluently. So that's why I say that it is more like a spectrum, the ladder of abstraction. So let's look at a few examples from my own work of what the difference is here. I start with an example of a scene on a high rung of on the ladder of abstraction. We're looking down on an event. We don't see many details to capture moments. And the details that I show are rather steady. They are not fleeting moments or movements or whatever. And everything is a bit more abstract. Well, this is from a story that I wrote called Unarmed Triumph. I ended up not publishing it because I began to doubt about the theological background of it. But there's still some pretty good writing in there, so I can use this as an example now. So, Unarmed Triumph. As the dawn colored the sky, deep orange, purple and blue, Ben got up and stumbled through the fields and heaths toward the city, the sun crawling along its path in the sky. And by the time Ben arrived on the plain of betterment, his shadow was right beneath his body. As you see, I have mentioned some elements. I made it somewhat visible, but we are not really following every step that Ben is making. He might have taken a break. He might have sat down somewhere. He might have taken a sip of some water, or I don't know what he could have been doing while he was walking to the plane of betterment. We only give a snapshot, basically, and the only moving object basically is the sun, and the sun is the one indicator of the fact that time has passed. So you read this in a matter of seconds, and the real time that has passed is 5 hours approximately, maybe 6. Because the shadow right beneath his body means, of course, that it is noon. The sun is high in the sky. I could also have written something like 5 hours later, Ben arrived at the plane of betterment. But that is not very engaging. Both is narrative summary. So we're summarizing the event of his walking to the plane of betterment, and that taking 6 hours. So this shows two things, namely that we are taking more of a bird's eye view, and you narrate by telling, so not so much by showing. And this way you can make way more time. You can explain, you can describe a much longer time frame in a shorter, a smaller number of words. But you can do this in an engaging way, which I hope I managed, that is visible. And the fact that time has passed is actually in a way shown rather than told. You can also do this in a very dry way, and both are effective. I mean, 6 hours later, Ben arrived on the plane of betterment. Sometimes also just does the job. Well, that is an example of quite high rung of the ladder of abstraction as narrative summary. I also selected an example of an immediate scene where I'm on a pretty low rung on the ladder of abstraction. We are inside the event, like a fly buzzing along the action. You read and feel along with the main character, which is me, by the way, in real time. This is a memoir of how I met my wife in Jerusalem. So I had quite a few positive responses to these articles, so that I decided to turn this into a little book. I didn't manage to finish that yet, but if you're interested, on my authors page on the website yourbeststory.net, you can read the first 2 chapters. Okay, ramparts and romantic letters. An example of a scene on a low rung on the ladder of abstraction. An immediate scene. Feverishly, I scoped the Zion Square for the bearded man, anxious not to let him out of my sight. I had been staring up at the ramparts and was lagging behind. The last bit of his blue hat disappeared behind the corner into Habat Street, and trying to catch up with him, I nearly knocked over a couple of tourists. The sudden smell of melting tires prickled my nose as I sprinted around the curve. And then I saw him. His back stained with sweat, he followed his graying wife along the parking lot toward the Jewish quarter. I reduced my pace to a casual stroll. Too obvious, Niels. But what did I care? I needed to know if the gorgeous lady was single, and whether that blasted scarf around her head meant anything. Do they know the way? I asked. Or shall I fetch them at the end of the ramparts? No, they'll find it, the man said. They have a map. One last time I turned and looked up. The lady was now no more than a little smudge far up on the ramparts. A bittersweet chuckle bubbled up inside of me. One day I'm gonna tell you how you've tortured me. Forcing myself to turn and rejoin the group, I tried to let go. So you see that this is very close. We also have here a little bit of this interior monologue that I was talking about. This, where was it? Too obvious, Niels. That's of course something I'm telling myself. You're really at that moment in my head. And later, one day I'm gonna tell you how you've tortured me. That is, of course, also a direct thought that I'm having there. That is sort of a quote. So you can see that almost as similar to dialogue. Well, it is also just monologue. It are basically quotes of what is going on in the character, my head. So it is very close. You are really feeling this along with me, and the time passes. The time that you read really feels as the very same time that it takes to get around the corner and to find her dad and to ask him these questions, etc. So the time for the reader is the same as the time for the character, all going at the same speed. And then I have also an example of combining these two, because rarely you have either one or the other. It is rarely so that that a complete book is on a low rung on the ladder of abstraction. Sometimes you have a book that is continuously on a high rung on the ladder of abstraction, but that just means that there are no narrative elements. That just means that a book with dry information, which can still be engaging, but there is no narration going on. But when you have narrative nonfiction or nonfiction with narrative elements, you will rarely see it either the one or the other. It's always a nice mix of the two. The next one, I have a little bit of immediate scene and the rest narrative summary. And that is because I remembered only a little bit of the actual history, because that's been a long time ago. And because we are writing nonfiction, we cannot just make stuff up. So I had to really latch on to this one memory that I had so literally, so concretely. And I wonder if I read it to you now, whether you can figure out, whether you can spot what the actual direct scene is. The Dyslexic Editor. Thank you. As a kid, I thought spelling and grammar were for boys and girls who had nothing better to do, like my sisters. When given a book, those little Brontes got so absorbed in words and syntax, they could be left unattended for hours. Not me. Rather than read about the masked man in black, I would become him, dueling my way through the garden to save Buttercup, and sometimes coming home bleeding real blood. To me, books were beautiful to look at, to leaf through, to sniff, but never ever did I read any. This lack of interest in the written word didn't go unnoticed at school. Not only did my reading scores raise eyebrows, also my writing level was abominable. One day my mom, propelled by my desperate school teachers, pointed out some errors in a "see you later" note. I looked at her defiantly and asked, "Did you understand what I wrote?" "Yes, of course," she said, frowning. "But then what are we talking about?" Despite my animosity towards grammar rules, I was a little storyteller. In the evenings, I'd animate the dining table with my fables, and at the age of 12, I authored short stories about a gunslinger searching for his long-lost father. Did you spot it? There were only a few lines of direct scene here, of active scene or immediate scene. Only a few lines that were really going along with the happening in real time. All of this was narrative summary until one day my mom, propelled by my desperate school teachers, pointed out some errors in a "see you later" note. And then suddenly you are there looking at it like a fly on the wall. I looked at her defiantly and asked, "Did you understand what I wrote?" "Yes, of course," she said, frowning. "But then what are we talking about?" And that's the end of the immediate scene. I remember a little bit more of it than that, but it used to be longer, but it was just not relevant. So I decided to keep it this short and snappy, because that really felt better into the story. But the point is, I remembered a little bit of direct scene, and it livens up this otherwise maybe a little bit dull passage. At least it is a bit of a spike in engagement that happens here, because suddenly you are there in the moment. I'm not talking about a situation anymore. I'm telling you, I'm showing you the situation as if you are there yourself. So those are my examples for narrative summary, for immediate scene, and for a combination of both of them. And especially if you're doing nonfiction, your work will probably look more like the last excerpt that I read, because, as I said, you will remember only tiny bits of the actual situation, and you cannot make anything up. So it is therefore also really a good idea to sometimes, when you happen to remember something, to write it down so that you don't lose it anymore, and to think deeply, maybe just free write and see what memories pop up when you are just writing down every memory that you can that just comes to you. And this way you can really find this treasure that you can use in your writing. And also to journal is really helpful, because if you can write even only in keywords how a certain event went, you will be able to write it later as an active scene. A while ago, my little boy almost drowned in the swimming pool because he overestimated himself a little bit, and I guess also overestimated him a little bit. So it was a very scary moment. And he said to me with after coughing, "You didn't be with me." You know, so such a little sweetheart. And my heart broke. I thought, oh, I wasn't there. Well, actually, I was pretty close by with you. He was 5 years old. So I immediately turned on my computer and began to write this scene down because I wanted to remember every single bit of it, because I'm working on sort of a biography, autobiography for my children later, and this is of course a nice thing to add to it. But that is what I mean. Something happens, you still have it fresh on your retina, and then you write it down in detail as an active scene, as you remember it happening. And this way you will have these things prepared for when you start writing the things you remember. Also, when you are interviewing for articles, if you're not writing about yourself, then it is a very good idea to try to let these people tell the stories themselves as an immediate scene, because then you can maybe reproduce that, especially if the interviewees will tell you what they were thinking, what they were saying, what the others were saying, that you can really reconstruct an active scene from it. So again, at least I said this at the beginning, I think, that this is not per se good for every kind of nonfiction. Sometimes you just want to create an accessible, easy to read, fast instruction or something like that. You want to convey information as fast as you can. In that case, don't add any narrative elements. It needs to serve the purpose. If you're going for impact on a reader who is curious and who wants to have an experience, then definitely use active scenes and narration. If you just want to convey an idea, then it is much better to just state it. You can state it engagingly, but don't stretch it, because when you're using narration, you're stretching it. And if you use a story, then automatically you're going to use way more words to convey an idea than when you just state the idea. And therefore, it also takes more time to read. So somebody who is just looking for quick information will get annoyed by any kind of narration that is sitting in the way. And lastly, I want to say that active scenes are much, much more difficult to write than the stuff that is higher, on the higher rungs of the ladder of abstraction. It is much more difficult to write. So, and especially for people who come from academics or whatever, they are used to writing very high on the ladder of abstraction. So they really need to learn how to make an active scene. And when I'm writing an active scene, when I'm writing something, it are specifically the active scenes that I have to come back to time and time again to make them better, because there are so much more. There's so much more trouble you can run into when you're writing active scenes. So next week or next session, I hope I will be able to record that for next week. I will go through a number of tips and tricks and criteria for active scenes that you need to remember. If you have these ideas in your head that I'm going to share with you next time, then it will be much easier to write an active scene. It has, in a way, a bit to do with starting with the right ideas in your head. So I hope to be able to bring that to you next week. Again, I invite you to subscribe to my newsletter and receive my tips in your email. And you're also invited for a free coaching call with me, and of course the free writing course I will also send to you when you subscribe to my newsletter. Go to yourbeststory.net, yourbeststory.net. Scroll down a little bit on the homepage, and there is the subscription form. Thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me also via my website. God bless you. Bye-bye.